One of the topics I'd like to cover is the mystery of iSCSI and VRM, and it is specific to BVMS and Bosch.
That's one key element to the BVMS architecture, and I know we've kind of teased it in these other videos, and it's good that we at least focus a little bit on it and what that, or how that function within this system, how we leverage it to do what we do.
So we talked about VRM, video recording managers, being the key component of recording in terms of BVMS, and the fact that it looks at the cameras, monitors the bit rate that's coming out of the cameras, it forward and backwards thinks a little bit, and then it interrogates the storage devices, which are iSCSI storage devices, and it sends what we call block lists to the cameras that would then communicate the information directly from the camera directly to the iSCSI storage.
Right. Yeah, and VRMs, I mean, the whole idea behind VRM and using just, in our case here, just one box to manage, in this instance, just 2 iSCSI targets, but really this could be a pool of multiple. Its job is to load balance our devices across usable storage, but also in the event of something happening where we have a communication loss of whatever sort, that we redistribute any active recordings that were existing on that box and get them moved so that there's really no manual intervention for recording to continue in that case. So that in itself, and cameras being able to utilize iSCSI to be able to directly record, is how we're able to accomplish that.
Sure. The limit that one VRM can control is 4 petabytes.
Yeah.
How many sites do we have out there that have 4 petabytes of storage?
Plenty. We have plenty, and those are the customers that realize what the capabilities of BVMS are, and going even further. I mean, you're not limited to just one VRM per BVMS system, right? So you can do multiple. There's numerous different ways that we can meet the needs of the customer as far as what their retention time needs to be.
Let's cover a couple of things that I find that we run into a lot out there that make the VRM iSCSI solution elegant. Let's talk a little bit about upgrades, system upgrades, and the use of iSCSI storage, and how VRM and iSCSI make this a really elegant solution for those customers who have the system in place for a long time and they have to go through a technology upgrade.
There's always going to come a point where your existing storage is going to meet end of its, or customers want to refresh. Let's call it that.
Technology upgrade.
Right. We want to refresh our hardware. So VRM allows us to group storage into what is called a pool, right? And that really gives us the ability of segmenting traffic. It also gives us the ability of making sure that we're able to retrieve video that's been recorded on legacy hardware, but continue to record on new hardware. And then once the minimum retention time is met, we can decommission that. And that's all done without any interruption to the end user who's reviewing all of this data. In fact, there's 0 interruption in between that. So it really gives you, just from the management perspective, just more into just, aside from load balancing and fault tolerance, it really gives you a way of, like you said, elegantly updating or refreshing hardware as you go along.
So that process literally takes minutes. You just turn a new iSCSI storage unit on, you format the device within VRM, and then you essentially connect it to the system. You put it in that pool, as you mentioned, and then effectively video starts flowing to that unit. You take the original unit, you don't mark it out of service, but you basically put it into a pool that's called read-only, right?
Yep.
And then that's why it's just sitting there, and somebody goes back to look at the video 30, 60, 90 days, whatever their retention times is, it's there. And like you said, once you meet that end of life, you simply delete that old unit from the system, pull it out, and you take it out of the system, and like you said, nothing is interrupted with the operation of the system and the recording, which is probably the most important piece of it.
Key differentiator between what your traditional NVR system would be, where a lot of them require manual load balancing, or basically a pretty good plan on how you're gonna, if you want to expand that, you're gonna have to split the system. VRM, it's really quite simple. You have your existing pool of storage, and as long as you're within the limitations of which is 4 petabytes, that's quite a bit of storage. It's as easy as dropping it in and allowing VRM to just add that to the storage pool, and it takes care of everything from there. So as far as adding storage, as you're adding devices, it's really quite seamless as you move along.
We've run into that a lot where customers are doing technology upgrades on cameras. They're going from SD type cameras with low bit rates and therefore smaller amounts of storage are required. And nowadays they want to go to 1080p or they want to go straight to 4K. Now we're taking that storage and we're multiplying it out several times. How do you accomplish that? And that is, like you said, simply kind of, let's just say we're just adding it to the bucket. We're just taking it. You need more storage, whether that's more time. Say you want to go from 30 days to 60 days, or let's say you want to add cameras. You're going from 100 cameras, 200 cameras, and you want to go to 400 cameras or add 25 cameras. Whatever you're doing, you need more storage. You simply buy the storage, add it into the system, and you don't have to reformat anything. You're not doing anything in Windows. You're not going through complicated processes and things like that. What about, we have a video that's dedicated to this, and that's resiliency. Why don't we touch base a little bit, because I think that's another elegant feature that's associated with the iSCSI and the VRM combination.
Yeah, so like we were mentioning, in the event of if depending what kind of storage options there are, based on the application requirements, but in the event where you have either planned shutdown or an unforeseen one, VRM will automatically take charge and make sure it relocates devices so that there's not an interruption, right? And we saw that in the resilience video, which everybody can take a look at, where we actually physically took down a unit that these two cameras were recording to. We went back and there was no gap in record, there was no loss, right? And I think that speaks volumes to what sets this aside and why it's unique. But even on top of that, how do you know when you need to get to the point of considering maybe expanding your storage, like you said, when you're upgrading devices or field devices and you're increasing your resolution, which is increasing data rates? VRM has a dashboard, and it gives you all of that information right there. It'll estimate your average retention time for you. You can keep an eye on that. It'll let you know when something's not going right, and it's really a really easy tool, in my opinion, that you can use to manage your recording, or at least keep an eye on what VRM's doing. Sure.
Hidden behind a little bit of security stuff there, a lot of times one of the ideas that we talked about yesterday, one of the other guys in the office likes to actually use the capability within BVMS of displaying a web page and creating that VRM monitor tool as a device in the operator client, so that you can keep an eye on it quite easily to see if there's a problem. So if something pops up in BVMS, you can look right at VRM and immediately know what's going on, whether it's a camera or a device or a network problem. One of the other things that I think is extremely beneficial to talk about is the differences in the kinds of storage that we run into a lot with our type of customers. There's typically, we call it an economical storage solution, and that's just what it is. It's a iSCSI storage device, and then that iSCSI storage is sitting behind a Windows operating system. So we're just making that an iSCSI target via that service capability in Windows, storage server or Windows server. The other option that we have, which I think is very elegant, is using, we private label NetApps, OEM NetApps, as a data center level storage stuff. Talk to me a little bit about the differences in those two devices and why one is liked over other for the kinds of customers that use both.
Like you said, the economic approach, and even I would dare to say like an entry if you're getting your feet wet within BVMS, the Diva IP product line is a great way to do that. It usually will meet the needs, but you also have to consider in these days, I mean, from an IT perspective, which we find, you know, IT groups are more and more and should be part of the conversation of these systems. That's more endpoint devices to manage, right? So when it comes to that, or it comes to scale, if we're talking big throughput, we're talking large number of devices, that's where the NetApp appliance comes into play. It can handle a great deal more throughput. It can also handle a lot more direct connections from these guys out in the field, and really ultimately will, you know, provide it will decrease the density or the rack space really. So there's all those different levels of what the application requirements are, but in reality, there's a solution from the Bosch perspective to meet every single one of them.
Again, very unique to Bosch in terms of, I think, the flexibility that BVMS brings to the table, and that's, again, these are things that iSCSI and VRM especially kind of separate us from those other VMS systems that use dedicated NVRs and where the data is flowing through the NVR and to the storage from there.
The key point is we're doing everything through this one VRM server, and we can do up to 4 petabytes worth of it. To do that in an NVR environment, and also meeting the fault tolerance piece of that and load balancing piece of that, it's going to require a lot more hardware than just that one server. So I think if anyone's not familiar with the VRM approach, or the BVMS approach, really reach out to us and let's have that discussion and see how, you know, maybe we can approach your system requirements in a different manner.
I think we have some great solutions to offer. So if you have a question or would like to see a demonstration on any of this, please don't hesitate to reach out.